Welcome to Brain Health Matters, a series of courses, programs, and shows just like this, all designed to help you become healthier so your brain can become happier and stronger. This week, I'm honored and delighted to have Dr. Heather Sandison join me again. Dr. Sandison is the founder of Marama, the first residential care facility from which dementia patients are treated to get better, not to decline and wither away, as is the case with so many other facilities. I'm especially passionate about Heather's work as my own mother suffered at the hands of certain unscrupulous caregivers at a facility in Canada. And I wish with all of my heart that my mom would have had the opportunity to be treated at Marama and receive the kind of care that Dr. Sandison's team gives. Stay tuned for the exciting results of Dr. Sandison's clinical study in which folks diagnosed with dementia actually experienced improvement in their mental status. You'll be amazed. Stay tuned.
Brain Health Matters is brought to you by The Musical Brain, Book 3 in the Healthy Brain series. Enjoy the fun and easy practices in this book to improve your memory, sharpen focus, and master your mind with the healing power of music. Available on Amazon everywhere.
Dr. Heather Sandison is a naturopathic doctor who's dedicated her career to supporting those suffering from dementia. She has created unique, successful solutions for patients and caregivers using clinical, residential, research, and educational platforms. Because we're both so determined to make dementia rare and optional, I am excited to have Heather back on the show to shatter common misconceptions about Alzheimer's and share what she has learned about keeping your brain sharp at any age. Thanks so much for joining us, Heather.
Kate, always a pleasure to see you and just so delighted to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited because a lot has happened since you were on last time. You've done another summit, you've been appearing on other summits, but for me, what's really exciting is your research project. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, so this was something that actually started many years ago. It was in 2018, we started talking about doing this. I was in a really fortunate position. I had a philanthropist come into my office as a patient, and he had a great experience. And so he asked how he could help. And around the same time, I was getting the same question from so many patients and families, which was, if I do this kind of Bredesen approach, if I come into your office and I spend the energy, I make the effort, I spend the money to get all the testing done and buy the supplements and do all the stuff, how likely is it that I'm going to get better? And I had no idea what the answer to that question was. I didn't know if it was half the time, most of the time, less than half the time. I just didn't know what to tell anyone. And it was really clear to me. I know Dr. Bredesen has said this over and over again. We need more research. We need research dollars going to things that are meaningful in terms of quality of life, not using the surrogate marker of amyloid plaques, but really looking at how does this affect our patients? Do they get better? Do they experience better quality of life? Is their cognition better? The really meaningful parameters that we want to understand in terms of outcomes when it comes to anything addressing dementia. And so, when this philanthropist asked how he could help, of course, I thought of so many things. I was like, buy me a house, pay off my student loans, but no, he just joking. And really, I thought immediately, like the best way that money can help this cause is by advancing the research. And so we set out to do a clinical trial in my office. It took about 18 months to get through the IRB process, which is the internal review board. And in dementia, this is really, really a critical component of the research, is that there's an independent board of people making sure that vulnerable participants in human research trials are not taken advantage of. And certainly dementia participants are very vulnerable. And so they took a fine-tooth comb through our protocols and gave us comments back, and we updated things, and we worked with a really phenomenal team, colleagues of mine, up at HealthGot, which is a research institute in Portland, Oregon. My colleagues, Ryan Bradley, and several people who work with him, Nini Callan and John. There's a group there who have just been so helpful through this marathon of this trial. And so they helped us put together the protocol, get through the review board. And then we started recruiting for this trial in February of 2020. We all know what happened in March. So in March of 2020, we had to put everything on hold because our protocol, the way it was written, was that these patients needed to be seen in person. And so we didn't want to put the research at risk. One, because we didn't know how COVID might affect people if they got COVID. Really early on in that spring and summer of 2020, we knew that COVID affected cognition significantly. And so we didn't want that to affect the outcome of the trial. We also didn't want to put people at risk, making them come into the office and then have them exposed to COVID. So we had a lot to think about, and we put everything on hold for a while until the fall of 2020, when we thought we kind of had a little bit better handle on things. So then in the fall, we started recruiting again, and it took us until April of 2022 to collect all of the data, and then until just this August of 2023 to publish our first trial, kind of the outcomes of the trial, the exciting outcomes of the trial.
Wow, what a process. That takes real dedication to stick with something like that. My goodness.
Well, I'm so grateful for the team that helped us and the participants. I mean, there were participants that were coming from LA, coming from Nevada. We really wanted to recruit people who are closer, but with COVID and all of the constraints and logistics, we ended up increasing that and having people come from further away. And it really took dedication from them and their families to stay engaged in the process, to keep up with the visits and the supplements and the testing, all of what it takes to do this. And so it really was a privilege to work with them. And I mean, just to watch how people transformed was really incredible.
So these people, right off the bat, you brought up an excellent point, is that when you're doing something like this, when you're trying to get better, you really have to be determined. Like you have to take the time, you have to make the effort, and really stick to a protocol. And then, so you said these people, the results were uplifting. So tell us, what are the results?
Yeah, so we recruited a total of 35 participants, and we had a very normal dropout rate around 30%, a little over 30%. That's very normal for Alzheimer's trials or cognitive decline trials. And so 23 of those participants finished the 6-month intervention that we had set out to kind of take on in our protocol. And of those 23 participants, 17 of them improved. And so we measured in 2 different ways. We measured both with MoCA scores, and MoCA scores this is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. Many people who are listening to your show are probably familiar with this. It's a quick, easy worksheet. It's a 1-page worksheet that clinicians will often do in the office to assess someone's cognitive function. And a perfect score is 30, normal is 26 and above. And we recruited participants with MoCA scores of 12 to 23. So we wanted to make sure that they had measurable cognitive impairment. This is the most likely thing that will lead to an Alzheimer's diagnosis later on. And we didn't exclude participants who had an Alzheimer's diagnosis. So we had several who did have an Alzheimer's diagnosis who were in the trial. And so again, of those 23 participants, 17 of them had an improvement in both the MoCA score. I think there was actually one participant whose MoCA score stayed the same. But you would expect that to decline over 6 months. So that, we kind of count that as a success. But we also measured using another scientifically validated, it was a computer program with many more. It's a battery of cognitive testing called Cambridge Brain Sciences.
Oh, yes.
And so this has been used a lot in research, and this is actually now covered by Medicare. You can ask your provider to do this, and it's a more nuanced way where if we think of the MoCA as kind of a blunt clinical instrument. The Cambridge Brain Sciences is a more nuanced way to look at different types of cognition, verbal ability or focus, attention span, that kind of reasoning, and then memory and overall composite cognition. And what we saw was that there were improvements for all those 17 participants on both measuring sticks. We saw improvement. So that's 73.9 or about 74% of participants had measurable improvement in 6 months. So this was the answer I was looking for, right? To tell all of these patients who were asking and their family, all the people asking, how likely is it that I'll get better? And so now we can say, if your MoCA score is between 12 and 23, 74% of the time, which are pretty good odds.
It's
And
way better than the pharmaceutical interventions.
right. And to compare that to Dr. Bredesen and his team, with Kat Toops kind of leading that paper, they had published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, same journal that we published in August of 2023. They published in July of 2022 a very similar trial. They had participants, 25 participants, with MoCA scores down to 19. So they weren't as severely declined, but they had some decline. So they took 25 participants with MoCA scores down to 19, and they did a 9-month intervention. So a longer intervention with less severely declined participants, and 84% of them got better. And this
Wow.
is pretty consistent with what we see. If we do a longer intervention and your MoCA score is not as low, even more people get better. I mean, this is amazing. This is really exciting. I'm so grateful to you for letting me share this, because it's just so exciting. Really shows that consistently, we have multiple sites and we're showing this, that if your memory is declining, if you're noticing that your brain isn't working the way it did 10 years ago, not only is there nothing you can do, there is something you can do, and it is going to work most of the time.
Yeah, see, that's so amazing to me. I keep trying to tell people this. We hear it all the time from neurologists, from general practitioners. There's nothing you can do. Go home, get your affairs in order, write your will, whatever. Like, really? Really? Especially like when my mom was diagnosed, she wasn't that far gone. It could have, if we would have known, if we would have had Marama, then maybe she could have turned it around with not simple tests. It's a lot of work, right?
It's
To
a
do
lot of
this.
work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But still, it can be turned around. And it's certainly better than anything that the pharmaceutical industry has come up with.
Right. And also, you make a good point, right? So a lot of people, when they start noticing this, their reaction is to either go straight into denial because they think there's nothing that can be done, or to try to hide it so that nobody knows because of the stigma. And I think that's really my purpose here, is to say, if you're starting to notice that your brain doesn't work the way it used to, today is the day to get help, because there are lots of doctors trained by Dr. Bredesen who can support you through this process. There's even a lot that you can do from the comfort of your own home. You don't even have to see a doctor to do a lot of the foundational diet, exercise, brain stimulation, stress management pieces, sleep, these pieces that you never have to talk to a professional about. You can just learn about, and they're very well, I won't say that they're easy, but they're very healthy and they're very safe. Right. So there's a
Exactly.
lot that you can do, very accessible.
And I mean, like, there are people like myself and many other Bredesen trained coaches
Yes.
who it's not so expensive. And if you're just starting to see little things that aren't fitting quite right, start now. That's what I say. The best time to do it is yesterday, but today's the next best day. So let's just do it. Yeah, right away.
You're so right. And if you're related, right? If you had a parent, like in your situation, if you had a parent and you might have genetics, maybe you have older siblings or parents that have had dementia, then you can start prevention. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think health coaching is by far the biggest bang for your buck. I mean, health coaches are, I think, vastly underutilized, and really, I think, will be a big part of how we as a society work ourselves out of this mess of chronic complex disease. I think there's so much that can be done with a health coach without ever having to even do a test. And it's such a great place to start.
I just had a discussion with Dr. Beverly Yates. She's one on your summit, and she's on this week. And she was saying, this situation that we're in around the world with these chronic illnesses, how on earth are we ever going to afford them? How are we going to deal with them as the population ages? We don't have enough money, resources, and families. They suffer so much with, well, I can say firsthand from Alzheimer's, but from many chronic diseases. I have an uncle right now who's deteriorating very rapidly from Parkinson's. These diseases just eat up the person, they eat up the family, they eat up the resources of the country. We just cannot afford to continue down this road. So people like yourself who are out there doing studies, taking that, wow, what a lot of work. I can't even imagine to get this, but that's what it has to happen to show that we don't have to let this continue. We can make this better, like Dr. Yates protocol with the diabetes. That's another big issue. And it's also a big risk factor for dementia, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Even sometimes you'll hear Alzheimer's called type 3 diabetes because glycotoxicity, or that sugar that accumulates in the blood that due to insulin resistance and consumption, overconsumption of sugar, it can't get out of the bloodstream into the cells fast enough, and it becomes toxic. It starts to create inflammation and almost a caramelization of the cells, especially in those capillaries and those end arteries and capillaries. And so this is part of why people with diabetes end up with vision loss. Maybe they might, if you've known somebody who's lost a toe, because there's a advanced glycation in products is what we call them. It's this poisoning of the cells so that they really become necrotic. They become insufficient and they no longer work, causing extreme disease. And the same thing happens in the brain and can affect cognition.
When you have somebody come into your office or Barama or that you talk to on consultation, what would you give them as the first thing if they have early cognitive decline? What would you suggest to them to start right away?
Yeah, so there's two big things, and they're diet and exercise, right? This is common sense, but uncommon practice. So the first thing I would say is diet is so crucially important. And I recommend an organic ketogenic diet. And I know that you have a lot of resources for helping people achieve that without adding too much animal protein. And so a veggie forward, healthy, organic ketogenic diet, I think it really helps to give the brain the food that it needs, give it the nutrients that it needs to heal. So it can get out of the attack and defend from toxins that might be in the food and defend against that glycotoxicity we just talked about, too much sugar. So really reducing those carbs so that and then also switching to organic so you're not getting the Roundup and the pesticides and herbicides, and you're also not getting all that sugar. Then the other piece you're doing is you're switching the metabolism so that you're no longer burning carbohydrates for fuel, but you're burning fat for fuel, which can be very, very healing for the brain. In addition to getting those extra veggies so that you have all those vitamins and minerals and nutrients that are so critically important to recovery of the brain. And optimization, right? So you can generate that energy, generate the fuel that the brain needs to run on each day. And many people notice that just from doing that, there's less inflammation in the system. They think sharper, they think clearer, they sleep better, they feel more rested. And that makes a massive difference in and of itself on its own. But exercise is also something that can make a huge, huge difference. And really, diet and exercise, they're just so completely foundational that I recommend if you're thinking about seeing the doctor and getting a bunch of testing done, while you're kind of in the process of getting that started, just start working on your diet and exercise because it's possible. I've had patients come in to me and they're like, well, we got started and we're already noticing benefit. And now we want to put the icing on the cake by seeing the doctor. Right. So don't wait to start these things. The other thing is exercise. So exercise, just getting movement, depending on where you're starting from, just getting movement is going to increase blood flow to your brain. But in addition, a lot of people haven't heard about using the combination of both cognitive exercise with physical exercise to optimize cognition. And that's what I recommend. You'll sometimes hear this called dual task or DUAL, dual task exercises. And it depends on the person, how physically fit they are, how cognitively fit they are, what that might look like. But something like ballroom dancing is a great example because you're engaging both physically, you're moving around, dancing to the music, but you're also having to engage cognitively to remember the steps, remember what's coming next, understand kinesthetically and kind of spatially where your partner is in space, where you are in space. And each of these stimulations of the brain helps with that cognitive function overall, especially when paired with that extra blood flow of the physical exercise. So for some people,
and also, let me just stop there with the dancing. You're also getting that all important social interaction, right?
Absolutely. And I'm working on a book right now, and we've made this checklist of, okay, can you get time in nature? Can you get time with others? Can you get physical exercise? Can you get cognitive engagement? Can we do all these things at the same time? Because when you get the synergy of all of those things, one, you probably get even more brain benefit. We know this with the dual task exercises, but it's also logistically easier to just fit it into your day if you can be checking multiple boxes at the same time. I want to give a few more examples, and I hope that our audience is kind of brainstorming right now as we talk through this. Okay, what would work for me? So I had a patient whose granddaughter was living with her, and her granddaughter was in a holistic nursing program and really excited about what we were doing. And so they would go for walks together. And her granddaughter, at first, she would quiz her grandma about dates in their family, birthdays of her aunts and uncles and her parents, birthdays of all the grandkids, anniversaries, things that were coming up and things that had happened before. And as grandma got better, she started quizzing her on nutrition because she was in this holistic nursing program. Grandma was on our new diet. And so they started talking a lot about nutrition, and they were talking about grams of carbohydrates, and they were really into it. It was really fun to hear. And then as she got even better, they started identifying birds in the neighborhood and starting to know what the bird calls were and what they looked like. And they would talk about the names of the neighbors. And so they made it really fun and really engaging and personally important and emotionally connected. And that I think, made a really big difference, right? If you look up dual task exercises on YouTube, you'll see people on Bosu balls, like balancing and being quizzed in math problems, or the presidents in order, or the states and their capitals. And that can be fun, but it's not as fun as remembering the birthdays in your family, so making it engaging and important to you, I think, is a really crucial piece.
I have a great exercise. We had a guest on the show several months ago, Trent McIntyre, and he has this ball. It's an exercise ball, and it's got letters and numbers on it. And you throw it back. You could, depending on the condition of the client, of the patient, you can either throw it or kick it a little bit, depending. And then wherever it stops, you look at that, and you're tracking it all the way. And then wherever it stops, you pick it up and you look and say, okay, there's a T. And then I use it with my dad because my dad's recovering from strokes. So we use that to name names of countries. So then, like things like that. So then we throw it again, and then we'll say, okay, numbers this time. What date is that for? Is somebody's birthday on that date? So yeah, it's really great. And otherwise he would never play catch. I can tell you, he would never play catch. But in this case, it's a big ball, so we're not too far apart. But it's something where we can play catch.
I love it.
And get that. It's a really great ball. I'll have to send you links to that because it's a really good, fun, way of getting things going. I love that idea, dual task exercises. So yeah, I love ballroom dancing, anything like that, anything where you're coordinating foot movement.
Right. And then even yoga and Pilates classes, Zumba classes, aerobics classes, where you're cued by an instructor, that can be a great opportunity, and it's kind of done for you as well. I think I just want to caution people. I share this all the time, but I've been going to a Pilates class for the past 3-4 years, and I can predict what the instructor is going to say before she says it. It's not cognitively engaging for me anymore. So this is dynamic, right? Hopefully you're going to get better. You're going to get more cognitive ability, and you're going to have more physical ability. So this needs to change. You need to keep up with where you're at and stay at your edge. Now, you don't want to be running so fast you can't talk. You want to be at a moderate level, both cognitively and physically. You don't want to be so high, so engaged that you give up, right? So it's too hard. And then you also don't want to be just going for a stroll in the park, right? That's not engaging enough to get the miracle we're asking for, which is a reversal of the process towards Alzheimer's.
Another thing is music. When you got to dancing, I use music, mindfulness, and meditation a lot in my Tune Up Your Brain program. Do you folks use that at Marama? Like music?
Absolutely. Tons of music. Yeah, we have music playing almost all day long. And really, we focus on using music from the era of we had a woman who lived with us for a long time, and she was from Hawaii, very connected to Hawaii, which I am as well. And so it was great. She always wanted to play Hawaiian music. Now, that wasn't as appropriate for everyone else because they didn't have that emotional connection. But Elvis, The Sound of Music, the Beatles, there are for the generation that's of the age that's suffering with Alzheimer's right now, we really want to play the music that they feel connected to. It's fascinating. We have a resident at Marama who's essentially nonverbal. She barely speaks, very, very severe Alzheimer's, but she knows the words to Jingle Bells. It's just like wild, like the things that leave our mind last. Music is something that music, the lyrics to songs that are meaningful to us, they last, they stick around, and you can see people just transform. They light up. Music has such a huge ability to you really have to be careful because it can change the vibe in a room for better or worse. It can change the emotion.
Yeah, I caution on that a lot. I teach people how to do vibroacoustic therapy and they want to play music. And I'm like, you have to be really careful what music you play because this is a healing process. We don't want to inspire any negative reactions. So we use more esoteric stuff for that. But mindfulness and meditation, we know that the brains of meditators are like the corpus callosum is much stronger and thicker for meditators. Do you also recommend that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we recommended Kirtan Kriya for all of our participants in the trial. Now, Kirtan Kriya has the reason that we went in that direction is because it's the Satanama. If many people have maybe heard of that, there's a lot of great literature, and in fact, there's meta-analyses showing how helpful this is not only for people suffering with dementia, but also for care partners. So we recommend that people do it with a care partner if there's a dyad there. And we do that at Marama. Now, we had people push back because they didn't feel like it was in alignment with their religious practices. And so, as alternatives, we just suggested either Bible reading or Bible study, maybe prayer practice, acts of kindness, or a gratitude journal. So, there are other things that you can do to help promote mindfulness. But the Kirtan Kriya is the one. Now, I think meditation is the best medicine, and I meditate daily. And I follow Tara Brach. I will use the Calm app. I have a bunch of different things that I've done over the years. But for dementia specifically, the Kirtan Kriya comes up over and over. And it's 12 minutes a day. It's completely free. It's very, very accessible and really doable. So that's another part of why we recommend that one.
And I think that's great that what you brought about 12 minutes a day, because people say, oh, I can't meditate for half an hour. I can't do that, but you can take 10 or 12 minutes to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to also ask about your online program, because I think what you're offering is so amazing. Caregivers they often get really sick faster than the people
I
they're
mean,
caring
Kate,
for.
it's so wild. I didn't realize this until a year or two ago. I found it in one of Dr. Perlmutter's emails that there is between a 2.5 to 6x risk in developing dementia for caregivers for someone with dementia. So compared to people who are not caregivers. So, if we think, this is way higher than the genetic risk. Being a care partner for someone with dementia comes with a very high amount of risk. And I don't say that to scare people, but I want to emphasize how important it is that, sometimes care partners will come in and they're like, it's all about my wife, or it's all about my husband. I'm like, no, you guys are in this together. You got to both do this. It's not that because she has decline already and you don't have it, that you don't need to do this. In fact, men, there's a research study done in Utah, and the people with the highest risk are the male spouses of a female partner with dementia. And so
Isn't that
they really,
interesting?
yeah, I know the stress of this is a big part of it, right? It makes a lot of sense. The stress of caring, having someone go from partner to dependent. Now, your sleep, your diet, your exercise, all of those things are going to go often by the wayside. They're the first to go when you're caring for a loved one. So important. And you were leading to the Marama at Home course, I think. But so just to kind of take people through the arc, when I was trained by Dr. Bredesen in 2017, and then started seeing patients pretty quickly and watched really amazing things happen really fast with the patients that started coming to see me for dementia. And then through that had a little bit of a reputation. And so people were asking these questions. The most common questions I were getting was, how likely is this to work? And two, where can I put my loved one? I have an uncle or an aunt or a parent, and I can't, I'm the classic person that calls is someone like me, someone who's, a professional female in her 40s or 50s, and she's got a family she's raising, she's got a house to manage, she's got a full-time job, and she has an older parent or uncle or aunt who she wants to get this care, but she can't drop everything and do it for them. And it takes work, as we've discussed. And so that question of where do I send my loved one kept popping up. And so I thought, well, how hard could it be? And we created a place called Marama. Well, Marama has done well, and it's not very big. There's only 12 beds there, and we've expanded to Kansas this past year. So we have another 14 beds in Kansas available now. But that's not very big. It's not enough to take care of everyone. And I can fully relate to the person who calls and says, but I don't want to send my family member to San Diego or Kansas. I want them right here with me. How do we take care of them at home? And so born out of that is Marama at Home, which is it's an 11 module course where I basically just talk you through the different components of the Bredesen program. And the idea is that weekly you can kind of add each layer. And for some people, it'll take a month to add the diet. And for other people, they're already doing the exercise. But we break it down so that it's bite-sized chunks, and people can get started. And it's, of course, informed by what we've learned in the clinic, in the trial, and at Marama, and doing some coaching for people who are interested in doing it at home.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because you're right. And even if you did have hundreds of beds, that's still not enough, right? There are so many people who are under this cloud sort of not knowing how to deal with this. So thank you so much for sharing that. I will make sure that there are links to everything that you've talked about, including your study, so that people can read it through if they're so inclined. Heather, again, this has been so wonderful. I'm so excited for you that you've done such amazing work and you continue to help so many people. I just wish I would have known you and this protocol 10 years ago when Mama got sick.
Well, Kate, I'm just so grateful that, people like you who've been through the suffering are transforming that suffering into, helping others. And it's just really beautiful. And I'm so grateful to be on the same team with you, helping to, support people and make dementia rare and optional through our work.
Rare and optional. Love it. Thanks again, Dr. Heather Sandison, for joining us here on Brain Health Matters. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Brain Health Matters. I'm Kate Kunkel, and I hope you enjoyed this empowering interview with Dr. Heather Sandison as much as I did. We know that we can overcome Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia with lifestyle enhancements, but now is the time to start. Sooner is always better. And one way to do that is to join me for my Tune Up Your Brain program to get a head start on your brain health. With fun and easy activities that you can incorporate into your everyday life, this program is the fastest way to improve your memory, with a beautiful melding of brain science and the healing power of music and sound. Check it out at the link in the show notes below. And there are many more episodes of Brain Health Matters, along with the latest brain health research, on our website at brainhealthmatters.today. Thanks again for joining us. And until next time, remember, it's never too early to look after your brain, but it can become too late. Now is the time to start.